Hi, my name's Eve. I am 27 years old. I have tried many times to record this video, um, but I'm going to do it now, once and for all, finally, the end, forever, okay? Um, I will edit it a bit, but I won't edit loads of it, because I'm not very good on the camera, to be honest. I'm not very camera ready, to be honest. I've got no makeup on, my hair's a bit of a mess, all this thing. But we're going to do it. We're going to record this video. This video is going to record my experiences working at Alton Towers as a ride operator and why I left. It's not going to be all negative, by the way. This is not a personal attack on Merlin or the managers there or Towers or people I worked with. In fact, for much of my time at Towers, I wasn't a very good person, I would say. I was a bit of a gossipy mare for much of it, and I do very much regret some of how I acted whilst I was there. At the same time, I think it was perhaps reciprocated too. So I think, horses for courses, right? You win some, you lose one. Anyway, I'm going to change some, I'm not going to name certain people from my experience there as well. I'm not going to name managers. Unless they're like big managers, I'm not going to name people I worked with because I don't think it's fair. What I will do is sort of name the rides I worked on, the area I worked on, the teams I worked on, that kind of thing. I will name those just to give people an idea, I guess, of what to expect. Also want to say that these are my views and my views alone. This is not going to be indicative of everybody who works at Alton Towers or Merlin Entertainments or any theme park for that matter. And this is just my perspective and my point of view. So yeah, let's get on with this. So I've always been, I say always, for a long time, being a park enthusiast, right? I always liked roller coasters and rides as a kid. I used to go to Alton Towers as a child a lot. I was a very sort of nerdy child, and I think it would be fair to say that this affected me like in a quite a weird way. When I applied for Alton Towers, I'll like put where I was in my life. I was 21. I was working at McDonald's. I just dropped out of college. I'd gone to college to do an access course to be a nurse, and I dropped out for various reasons I won't want to get into. I was feeling pretty hopeless, and the one thing that was kind of tiding me over a lot of the time was going to theme parks. Like, I wanted to go to parks and sort of like enjoy myself, and like it was an escape for a lot of things for me. And so at some point, I think around 2014 fireworks on Alton Towers, I kind of thought, like, why don't I apply? There were a lot of logistical issues with this, namely being that I lived in Mansfield, which is about an hour and 20-minute drive away from Alton Towers. But like many of enthusiasts and people, I decided to take the plunge anyway, because, of course, I am not the first or last person to do this. And I will say that if anyone who does decide to do this, you have my full respect and admiration, but god damn, it is hard work. Like, especially if you have kids and stuff as well. But you do you, right? You do you. You remove yourself, whatever. So I was super excited when I got this job interview. I applied to be on rides, is what I wanted to do, and I got in on rides. The interview process was quite like daunting. I found it was like a big group interview, and then you had to do a presentation, and then we had to do an individual interview afterwards. But I got through it fine. It's great. I remember leaving and not feeling like I did very well, but apparently I must have done okay, because there I was. In my first season, we had my rides. So the team structure was kind of like, we had team North, East, South and West. And team North just did like admissions in car parks and stuff. Then team West had CBeebies Land, Spinball, Rapids, Flume, Mutiny Bay, guest experience. Team East had like Nemesis, Air, Monorail, Subterra, Ripsaw, Mine Train. And then Team South had like Smiley, Oblivion, Rita 13, all those rides up there as well, as they were at the time. So yeah, I was on Team West. So my rides were the Sky Ride, Sonic Spinball, Mutiny Bay, and then like the Flume. So I had like a pretty nice selection of family rides, which I liked. Although at the time I remember kind of resenting that. I kind of wanted to work on a coaster or something big. So my first ride I trained on was Skyride, and that was also the last ride I worked on too. And then the second ride I worked on was Spinball, which was very different and a lot of fun. My first sort of like few weeks at Towers were quite challenging, possibly because I was commuting and possibly because I felt quite isolated, like I didn't know anyone from school or anything because it was a different area to me. But actually I kind of grew to really enjoy the job and really enjoy the people there. And I got made an operator pretty damn quickly, like after 6 weeks I think. For a while I then operated on like Heave-Ho, Marauders and Battle Galleons, which was definitely a new experience. And I kind of realised I was quite good at working with like families and like on family orientated rides and stuff. Sort of like June that year, there was a big incident on the Smiler. I don't need to spell out what happened because Wikipedia is your friend. But ultimately it did change a lot of the trajectory of the park. And I suppose the whole time I was there, it kind of was a big cloud, right? So yeah, that was happened, and then it really sort of changed the tone and the mood and stuff. But despite all that, I really enjoyed my 2015 season. I completely skipped over the part where I fell in the Flume. That's a whole story in of itself. I will tell it another time. And yeah, I ended up making some really nice close-knit friends, and it was really lovely. And I got my job back quite quick, so that was nice. The second season, a whole load of things happened basically in my personal life. So the person that I was like seeing and then living with at the time and was also working at Towers, we broke up for fairly dramatically I'd say. And he kicked me out, and then I was on the sofa of my friend's house for 5 days, so that was enjoyable. Thanks for that, mate. In both a sarcastic and literal way, depending on the recipient of that. So anyway, I ended up moving to Hanley, which definitely had its pros and cons. I was living in a bed sit and it was very fun, but I also meant I was nearer to like people from work and I could go out and do things with them. And for the first time since I was about 18 or 19, I was actually going out to the pub and seeing people and stuff, which I really liked. I really got the opportunity to make some friends and stuff and sort of get into new relationships, and a lot happened that year, and it was generally pretty cool. I remember my rides all changed, so I ended up on Sea Boobies Land as well. Sea Boobies Land and Mutiny Bay was pretty much all I did that season. And I kind of got up on a lot of BB's rides. I then sort of, made a nice friendship circle, which was cool. And some of them I've kept and some I haven't, and that's kind of a shame in of itself, but that's another whole story I'm not going to get into either, because it's not my business. Anyway, it was just a nice year. I remember feeling pretty depressed about that year, and I remember sort of feeling pretty sad over New Year's and kind of wishing it all ended. But actually, on hindsight, I actually think it was quite a good season, just in terms of sort of the people I met. It was like a coming of age almost, for me. I had to kind of grow up a lot. In my third season, 2017, the teams moved again, and then I got moved onto a team I didn't want to be on, and then I was a little marred cow for the whole season because I was like, I didn't want to be on this team, which I would take full responsibility for. I was not in a good place, and I quit. I was like, I'm done with this job. I quit for about a month. There was all other things as well, so it was around this point that I decided I wanted to go back into education, because as I mentioned before, I dropped out of college prior to working at Towers, and I kind of decided I want to go back to college. So I did that. That was awesome. That was probably the best thing that came out of that year. I started an access course in September, and I started back at Towers on a different team to the one I wanted to be on. Yeah, so that's 2017. I don't have much else to say about 2017. 2018 was my best season at Towers. I got Type 1, which is like, I operated the Skyride for a bit. And I got invited to the Star Awards for the first time, which was like the big award ceremony, and my team won because we were on the team where Wicker Man was. And Wicker Man was the new roller coaster on the team, which I didn't work on, but I did do some baggage days on, like some service. And then 2019 was my last season. In hindsight, I probably didn't need to go back for that season. I ended up being late for a lot of it and getting into trouble for being late because, I had loads of joint issues. I had loads of issues with my mental health. I had loads of issues with timekeeping. It was not a good time. I don't know why I went back, and then I quit. So yeah, that's the overview of my time at Towers. That's a very short and brief overview of the time I was there. So as to why I left. Okay, well, I'll talk about why I left, and then I'll talk pros and cons. Okay. No. I will talk pros and cons, and then I'll talk about why I left. It'll be easier. Pros. The pros are I met lots of really cool people. Lots of really, really interesting, cool people. Many of which I still talk to. A lot of which I don't, but many of which I still do. It is the kind of job that attracts lots of different kind of people, and I think that's pretty cool. I think I learnt some really interesting sort of transferable, valuable skills in the job too, which is always useful wherever you go. It gave me a sort of break, I guess, from I just needed that sort of stopgap job at the time, and I think it did me a lot of favours to do it, just in terms of my own personal growth and stuff. The job was very fun. There's no 2 days the same, which is not the same to be said about many other jobs. I think it just prepared me for a lot of things in life. It just prepared me for a lot of weird stuff that would happen. As for the negatives, I guess the pay and being seasonal was difficult, and the variable hours as well, which can not always suit a lot of people. I think the biggest problem for me was that it felt very cliquey. There was a lot of cliques within the teams and stuff, and a lot of gossip, and I'm guilty of some of it as well. I'm not gonna lie, it was a very gossipy and not always a pleasant place to work. You definitely got the impression that they were people would get positions over other people because they were favoured by certain management and stuff, and that is what it is. But the thing is, I've learned it's kind of the same for every workplace ever. Unfortunately, that's not just exclusive to Towers. It just felt very much impactful because it's such a big team you work with, and I feel like there's a lot of people vying for permanent positions for various reasons, whether they're really into the job, they've moved location to be there, whatever. That for me was the biggest negative, and it did have a very much a sixth form vibe, in that I feel like it felt like you was at school for a lot of it. Even everything from HQ and the cafeteria, it felt like a high school cafeteria at times. Who sat with who and all that sort of malarkey, which is fine for a bit, but you stay in sixth form for 2 years, right? And generally speaking, and I feel like that 2 to 3 year trajectory is kind of the norm for most people at Towers. I think after that point, you either sort of graduate onto better jobs, or you do something else, or you promote to something else. Not many people stay at Towers for a very long period of time, and the ones that do tend to work their way up quite quick. And that's great. I think that's fantastic if that's your career goal, but it's not the reality for many people. There's a lot of people going into Towers forgetting it was a seasonal job, and the competition for permanent roles, at least when I was there, was quite tough. You have to have a certain criteria to have gone for the permanent jobs, and there's no guarantee you get them. I've seen people who work 4, 5, 6 seasons and not get permanent roles, and other people would do their first or second season and get them, and that's fine. That's a whole individual thing. But I think a lot of the people who go in expecting that will be disappointed. I think people need to manage their expectations as to how and what they'll get and how they're going to get it, and take every opportunity as well. There was one season where I did some work for technical services, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really helpful, and it really made me understand sort of the rides and how they worked and stuff. And also I got paid, so I can't complain about that. So as to why I left, well, there was nothing personal against anybody. As to why I left, really, I was getting a little sick of the ins and outs of the workings of sort of the gossip and things. But I think the main reason why I left was that I'd kind of just grown out of the job. It wasn't a personal thing. I just reached a point where I kind of found myself not caring anymore about anything. And I feel like once you reach that stage of apathy, it's counterproductive. I was in my second year at uni. I'd already done quite a bad first year, and I wanted to like do better the second year because I feel like I scraped through the first year, the skin of my teeth. I didn't want that to happen again in my second year, so I wanted to really dedicate my time to university. I was also go back to Nottingham, which is where I go to university, and I didn't want to, it was too far of a commute really to dedicate time to travel. It just felt like the right time for me to leave. And I don't think me staying any longer would have been a good thing. In fact, I don't even think going back that season would have been necessarily helpful. Part of me does kind of wish I just quit the end of 2018 and left on a pretty good high. But I don't regret any time working at Towers. I thought it was a great job, and I would recommend to anybody who's an enthusiast. I think, as I said, manage your expectations. And don't go in thinking you're going to change the world, because you ain't. That's kind of all I've got to say really about the topic. I mean, feel free to comment whatever you do. Cool. Bye.